Hello, I'm back with the second installment of the three origin and evolution visits I want to have with you. Mainly about where I began in these hobbies, where I am now, and what kind of influenced me along the way. Now we're going to talk about coffee. So I think I've shared up to this point that I started drinking coffee at a very young age, and a lot of my own progression as a coffee drinker has kind of mirrored the way that coffee's been presented across the United States over the last century or so. I started out with, my grandmother. She drank coffee every day, and I don't remember her ever having a coffee pot. She drank instant coffee that she sweetened with saccharin tablets, which are really weird. I don't even think you can get these things anymore. They've been linked to cancer, but they had a very certain sweetness to them. But it was always a Folgers Crystals, which was and I guess you can still get these things. I don't know. I wouldn't drink one now, but when I'd stay with her when I was young, she'd make a cup of coffee, and she'd put an ice cube in it because I was a small kid, and things that were hot were uncomfortable. So I probably was one of the first iced coffee drinkers, right there on the front steps of my grandmother's trailer house in Southeast Texas. So that was where it started. I was probably 3 or 4 years old. I really don't remember the first time I drank a cup of coffee, but it was early. And then throughout my life at home was drip coffee. And my parents had one very specific type of coffee they drank. And really, this is something interesting about people in the southeastern southern United States. Coffee is almost like a religion, right? So you kind of have your own little groups. There was certainly these Folgers people, and Folgers was drink all over. Okay, but my parents drank Seaport. They drank a medium dark roast Seaport. It's very, I don't know why. I think they probably had it because it was something local. It was made in Beaumont, and Beaumont was only a few miles down the road. So that's what we drank. And still, when I go back and visit, that's what we drink. And the way that everybody has a way that they make their coffee, right? And it's not, this much vanilla syrup. And it was my mother's. I remember to this day because I'd get up earlier than them sometimes, and I'd go make their coffee. We always made the coffee pot before we went to bed. So it was sitting there, and before there was a time when I was young where you'd make the coffee pot, you'd get it all set up, and then the first person up would go push the button, and it'd make coffee for everybody. Later on, we moved to having timers, and the coffee pot would go off in the morning. And now, oddly enough, both me and my parents, we're both pushing the button in the morning. So that's kind of interesting to think about. But at any rate, my mother would take 3 heaping spoons of sugar in a cup of coffee. I'm not so sure it's very different now, although she may not admit to it. And my dad used to take a spoon of sugar and a half a spoon of creamer. Mom would go ahead and take a full spoon of creamer. It was easy to tell people's coffee apart because you just got to look at the different shades of coffee. So I could still tell, oh, that's Mom's coffee or that's Dad's coffee. Kind of like the baby bear's porridge thing, right? And I was somewhere in between. I never really loved lightener or milk or anything in my coffee. So I was, for most of my childhood, a 2 spoon of sugar in a cup of coffee person. And that's the way I went all the way through high school. I used to just have 1 cup of coffee in the mornings usually. Then I went to college. Now this is the breaking point for a lot of people. There's a lot of people when they go to college, the whole coffee scene changes for them. I was one of those people. I turned into an avid coffee drinker in college, and because I was a biologist, I found myself outside a lot. I found myself away from refrigeration, things like that. even carrying powder around was a little much. So I moved away from having anything in my coffee. Certainly no creamer, but not even sugar. So it took a little while, but somewhere around 21, 22 years old, well, before that, probably 20, I went to completely black coffee. And I really hadn't turned around since. I remember the way that people got together and drank coffee when I was young was we would get together at a coffee shop, right? And not really it wasn't even a coffee shop. Nix that, we'd get together at a cafe. In fact, a lot of people would drink at the feed store or just anywhere you went, there was a coffee pot. And some people even had their own cups at those different places, right? So, you know, there might be some old guy that always goes down to, we had this place called Doris's when I was a kid. It was run by a lady named Doris Touche. So, but at any rate, there were people that had their own coffee cup at that place, right? So people I kind of even identified, and that was the third space before like Starbucks or any of those places became the third space. You had a place where you got together with people and had coffee. And a lot of times it was the feed store or it was the cafe, right? There was a little cafe in town. And to this day, I love cafe coffee. There's something about coffee in one of those white mugs that has all the scratches and everything on the outside that's really heavy on its own. Yeah, I don't know. You know, it could be bad coffee. And if I'm sitting in a place where there's a pie on the counter and as much coffee as I can swallow being filled into this bottomless cup, I'm there. So that was the beginnings. And through college, when I was in college, this is when I guess the second wave of coffee really, really hit hard, right? We started seeing Starbucks. We started seeing these chain coffee shops. And I know they were there before, but this is when they were really blowing up in the 90s. And this is when it got kind of common to have these, you know, I remember cappuccinos being popular, and the cappuccinos you get are not cappuccinos you would have gotten, you know, in Italy, and you know they were very different. They were mass market cappuccinos, right? And there's people going to the gas station and pushing a button, and somehow a cappuccino comes out, right? So that's where we are. But people move to this being interested in drinks made out of coffee rather than just coffee itself. And I never really got on that train. God, I can't even remember. You know, now even my wife, she'll drink it, and she'll drink lattes and things like that. And I have an espresso machine, and I have all the syrups, and I can make that stuff for her. I'm still horrible with any kind of artwork on top, but anyway, I still don't drink it. I typically at coffee shops, I get an Americano, but this time, so this was mid 90s. This is when we started, say early 90s, mid 90s, we got a lot of these little shops coming up. People love these things, right? They still do. I see when I take my kid to school, there's all these other young kids showing up with these big drinks that are, you know, it's brown, you know, it's got coffee somewhere in it. You probably can't hardly even taste the coffee in it. But that's never really been for me. Every once in a while now, I'll think, man, you know, I'll get a flat white. That'll be fine. And about halfway through it, I realized, you know, this really would have been much better if it would just been an Americano. So, or just a straight espresso, right? So I really, at this point in my life, enjoy the flavor of the coffee bean. I know this sounds pretentious, right? But I like to be able to taste the nuances in the coffee. I like to see what different extractions do to the same beans. I still have a pot of coffee made in the morning, right? I went from having this, a Mr. Coffee like everybody had. Oh, my mother and dad, they went through so many little Mr. Coffees, or even that Black & Decker Space Saver. I don't know if your parents had it, but I feel like every parent in the 70s and 80s had this. It went underneath the cabinet, and and you did everything through like little drawers. It was horrible to clean. I don't think Mom kept it around very long, but I do distinctly remember that thing growing up. But now my parents have moved on to a bun, which if you're using strong coffee, like they're using dark roast, Seaport, or sometimes they'll use Community. Those extract pretty well. I mean, you still get a good strong cup of coffee. It's putting really hot water through grounds really quickly. So it's certainly drinkable. I don't know that you'd get much difference from different types of different coffees, different. I don't know that you'd pick out a lot of nuances. I think a lot of coffees made in a bun probably tastes like a coffee made to bun. But I got tired of going through a new coffee pot or a new coffee machine every year. And this was, if you make coffee twice a day, it's making over 700 pots of coffee a year. And some coffee pots just can't handle that. And we were getting to where we would buy $150 coffee pot or machine. When I say coffee pot, it's a coffee machine, right? A drip coffee machine. And a year and a half, they're gone. So we did finally decide to invest in a real, something that'll last for a long time. And we spent a little money and got a Technivorm Mocha Master, and we've been crazy happy with that thing ever since. It's so simple. There's no timers. There's nothing. It's just one button you push, and it makes coffee, and it makes damn good coffee. So that's where I am on coffee machines now. I have all the abilities to do things like I do have an espresso machine. We still have this holdover Keurig that was there was circumstances why we have it, but sometimes I use the little basket and I'll put my own coffee in there. And sometimes if I'm making a coffee with chicory, because that comes pre-ground, right? I'll go ahead and make it in that, and it's okay, right? If I need something fast, it works. But we have that. We have our Mocha Master. I have means to do pour over, French press, AeroPress. I'm a little crazy with these things, right? But I can probably make 10 or 12 different ways, or some coffee drink 10 or 12 different ways here at the house. That's because it's one of my hobbies, right? And I enjoy it. And sometimes there's a lot of work that goes into it. The one thing I have gotten away from is a lot of pre-ground coffee. That was a big revelation, right? There's a big difference in ground coffee coming out of a bag and grinding your coffee and immediately making coffee with it. I'll probably say that is the biggest difference as far as improving the flavor of the coffee that I've experienced in my journey of coffee drinking. So we do that every morning. We'll grind our coffee, put it in the Mocha Master, push the button, and go about our morning. It takes a little longer. My mom's coffee pot makes coffee in like 3 minutes. Mine takes 6 to 8, but man, it's a good cup of coffee. So that's where I am with that. As far as the types of coffee I drink, I keep a small collection of kind of premium beans that I'll use with I have a hand grinder. I'll use a hand grinder and use those for pour overs, or even with the AeroPress sometimes. Probably about once or twice a week I'll do that. But I have we have a upscale grocery store. I lost that word. Grocery store in town that has a really nice, responsibly sourced coffee that we keep, and we buy those in a little bit more bulk because of so much coffee we drink. It'd get pretty expensive if I went high end on all my beans. But it's a nice Costa Rican coffee that we use routinely. Now, let's see anything else as far as interacting with the coffee community, again, like I said earlier, I started out going to these cafes, right? And I still love cafes. Uh, and I'll even say going to a Starbucks or going to any commercial coffee spot, and many times that's where I'll end up if I'm traveling and I need to go get some work done, because they always have internet. Now, if some little diner somewhere had internet and a bottomless cup of coffee, I'm there instead, right? But I also really enjoy these third wave coffee shops where you can actually speak to someone who knows a lot about the coffee they're selling. Oftentimes, I'll ask them, what different coffees do you have? What different beans do you have for pour over? Ask about the nuances of the flavors, and that is a lot of fun. It's just like going to a tobacconist and asking them, what's cool to, what do you have new and exciting, or going to a bookstore and talking to the people that own those bookstores that know everything about them, right? So it's really, really cool to talk to people at the coffee shops that can tell you everything about the coffee, and that's an additional interest. So I hope that that kind of gives you a little insight into where I am as a coffee drinker. I'm certainly not someone who absolutely has to have a special, high-end coffee bean, right? And with every drink, I still make a pot of coffee in the morning. I still drink 2 pots of coffee a day. If I don't have coffee in the mornings, I will stop at 7-Eleven and drink something horrid, right? Just because I need coffee. And on a Saturday afternoon, if I have a little time, I'll make a pour over from something really nice. And I'll make my wife and son a latte or a mocha with the, with all the equipment we have here. I enjoy everything around coffee. So if I don't have a special love for a lot of the things with Dean Fancy, right? Coffee drinks that you have, that's fine. I hope you enjoy those too. It's just not my cup of tea. My wife loves them. My son loves them. But I'm happy with a nice cup of black coffee that was, sourced responsibly, made with reasonable care, and tastes great. So that's my story from the front porch of my grandmother's trailer house in Southeast Texas at age 3 or 4 to today, sitting here in front of you with a nice cup that was just made with my coffee machine that I'm lucky to be able to make enough money to afford these days. So with that, I hope you have a great day, and I hope you watch the next bit, the next video I make about my origin and evolution as a consumer of literature.